Hi everyone, this is Ariana Aparicio, aka Coach Aparicio from The Program Podcast. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do this live or not because, as Conquest could probably attest to, it's been on my spirit for a very, very long time to talk about this, address this. But as we know in the United States, it's very divisive what's happening right now with the economy and certain things like that. Just watched a very interesting video that came out yesterday on a channel called Diary of a CEO. And in that video, it was talking about the economy, the recession of 2020, recession, if it's going to happen. It was talking about, the title of the episode is Emergency Debate. They lied about the economy recovering. Is a financial apocalypse coming? It has garnered right now today around 1.5 million views, and it came out, like I said, on the 20th. It's starring, Steven is the host of the podcast, and it's starring Gary Stevenson, who is a day trader as his career, as his job, and Daniel Presley, who is a millionaire. They say in the episode somewhere valued around more than $10 million. It was a very interesting debate. Very interesting debate. So here's the thing that has been on my conscience and my spirit to say that is very decisive. I know it's going to be very decisive again, but I would not be doing this podcast a service, nor would I be doing my coaching program and my clients a service if I did not address this side of things. We haven't talked a lot about politics on the podcast, and neither have we talked about economics, which are loves of mine. What Trump and Elon are doing, I am now going to make a firm stance on that they are doing the right thing by the people. I know it's divisive. I know that comes like a boom, a nutshell, or whatever. But watching this episode, I heavily encourage for people to do so. It definitely shows how people are thinking, how people are moving, the fear that people are moving in. But there's a very dangerous mentality that I'm starting to see where everyone is blaming one side and not taking any accountability. And I feel like it's a destructive mindset in itself, to where more than half of your life you're saying is controlled by someone else and not you. There's something to that, to me, that not only makes, I believe there was a report of Gen Z becoming the most oppressed generation of the day and age, and that wealth creation and all this other stuff. Let me make something clear. There has never been more opportunity to acquire wealth than now, ever in history. The reason why, we can go back to how America was founded, right? And the reason why Black people in particularly fought for their freedoms. It's because we know that the wealth exists there. The thing that we fight for is our equal opportunity to get it or obtain it. There has never been more of a freeing system than now. The only time that market becomes less free is when the government gets in control of it. There has been, on the podcast, Gary was basically stating, he wrote a book. I don't know what the name of it is, but basically his stance was that he wants to start taxing wealthier people somehow, or holding on to all the money, which again, fine. That's your stance. Daniel's stance is that you win by not taxing anybody, by basically taxing as minimal as you can, the government taxing as minimal as they can, and letting the wealth be among the people to basically sort out, which is like the free market argument. And it's something that's very passionate to me to discuss, because I can only speak from personal experience. It's the only thing that I feel like when people have their story, they can go ahead and share it. I am African American. My family comes from Trinidad. I was not given any type of wealth in terms of what they say now. Land, my family owns houses, my family built a house somewhere else. It's nothing like that. I was first generation born here from my mother and my father, who are both Trinidadian citizens, and they were born in Trinidad. The thing to me that I feel like people are getting into, this victim mindset of, it's beyond me to do this, the rich people are at fault, the rich people. I have not seen more more of a devaluing and demotivating mindset than when people start blaming other people rather than what they can do with what they have. I think it's dangerous because what ends up happening is that you have like these stories to where people will have the success stories, right? Like they were poor, they didn't have anything. Let's just say, my example, my parents worked their butt off, but they were not my first investors. My first investor in my accounting company was my boyfriend. I made a six-figure company out of $2,000. That is being here in the States. That's me acknowledging that the States allowed me to do that, the United States. I'm hearing this lack of motivation to where people are basically saying the hands that they're dealt is something that they cannot change. They cannot change their fate. They cannot change, and it really hits me in a way to where if you had that mindset, if people had that mindset, there would be no change. If people didn't feel like they could be dealt a bad hand but make something of it, we would not be where we are today. If, again, ADOS, whatever, if you sat here and slaves said, hey, listen, they're not going to be anything more than slaves, there's no point. That was their reality. That's what they lived in. They lived in being slaves to a person who kept perpetual slavery, by the way, because we had our children in slavery and they wanted to enslave them, right? That's the black people's, that's African-American story from West Africa to the Caribbean to the United States. It's only when they decided to change the hand they were dealt with and do with what they had on the ground that we saw change, period. This to me is a mindset that, if anything, they also talk about education. I am a big believer, and the reason why entrepreneurship is not taught in schools is because it's a way that they destroy competition. If a rich person ever wants to destroy competition and keep wealth with them, they basically demotivate other competition. They demotivate the ways or how to even start a business. They demotivate or get behind ways that people can become employees or have debt, but not grow anything, not go beyond that. It's very interesting because at the end of the day, we live in a very divisive time. We live in a time where people don't know what side of the aisle they fall on. People do not understand or know where the economy is going or not. I do believe that we're going to hit a recession. The reason why I would say I know this more so is because doing the studies, yes, we're falling into a decline. The thing I don't understand is how everyone's blaming Trump for that, because when Trump ran his first term, I remember people saying years into his first term that he inherited the economy that Obama made. So years into his first term, he inherits an economy and he doesn't do anything, right? And there's some people who believe that his whole term was Obama's economy. Fine. But we just came out of, and whether people know this or not, Biden's economy and the way that they handled COVID, there were economists who knew from the minute they started giving people checks and started keeping people home that this crash was imminent. Whether you know that or not, it actually makes all the difference now, but there's people who already knew this when COVID started printing money. When the government started printing money, you can ask my clients. I was like, hey, listen, do what you can do with this money because it's going to hit a rock bottom when it's done. It's devaluing the money. It's not being given to you because people care about you. The government is not sitting here giving you money because of bailouts or all this other type of stuff. They're doing it to buy. They're doing it to clear their own debt. And then they're making more debt. They're doing it for the people who are inside the government, which is a conflict of interest. They're doing it for the people inside the government who have personal interest in investing in whatever money they get from the government into outer places. The bureaucracy, which is what Elon and Trump talk about, is exactly that. When you have super rich politicians, let me get on a point here. When you have super rich politicians who made their money in politics, that's a conflict of interest. Because once you are a politician, you have access to resources and knowledge and information that the regular public does not. The difference, which is what everyone's saying, is that have been politicians that have come in, let's just say they earn six figures a year. And I mean on the low end. We're not talking about $300,000, $400,000 a year. We're talking about, let's just say their family gross is like $150,000, right? They're on the campaign trail, senators, council people, whatever. Governors, so have you. They then become millionaires. Their business was not made before they got into politics. It was made during they were in politics. The difference with Trump and Elon, since I hear this argument a lot, oh yeah, they're taking more money than the third. Elon is already a billionaire. He was a billionaire before he got now I'm not saying he's not making a really great check off of being a contractor for the United States. I don't know what that deal would be, but it has to be in $1 billion somewhere. I would guess. But I could be wrong. It could be that Elon's not taking anything for it, or he's taking minimal than what other consultants have done. Government consulting is nothing new. They do it all the time. It's called subcontracting, or it's literally just consultant work. They pay people to come in, audit, look at things, create solutions to things that they might not see. They pay them a check and they keep it moving. Consulting firms know this. This is nothing new what Elon is doing. He's just the most famous one to be doing it, right? Without this contract, and Trump without the presidency, Trump doesn't even take a salary. I don't know if he does in this term, but I do know in his first term he didn't. It wouldn't surprise me if this term he's not either. They're rich without it. They have made their money before politics was even a thing for them. So when people sit here and say, oh, they're going to do this and they're going to do that and they're making their money off this, you must not have known that they were some of the richest people before politics. You know who wasn't rich before politics? Nancy Pelosi. You know who wasn't rich before politics? Biden. You know who wasn't rich before politics? Obama. You know who wasn't rich without politics? What's her name? Elizabeth Warren and anyone else that you can basically put in there to say that they're becoming richer when they are politicians. That is a direct conflict of interest. People don't talk about it. I don't expect anything to be addressed there. But that is the bureaucracy that Trump and Elon are talking about when they're sitting here saying, hey, listen, if you get into politics and you become a millionaire, you are stealing from people. You're stealing intelligence. You are stealing, it's called insider trading for a reason. You're doing insider trading. You're doing all these things that the public is not going to care more so about, right? Because the average citizen is just trying to make ends meet. We believe that everyone's playing fair, and that's not true. Not everyone is playing fair. I wish it was like that. I still am in favor of a society where everyone is getting their fair share, but never has it been more fair for a person who is poor, and when I mean dirt poor, I mean poor, whatever poor you think below that, to sit here and have an idea, nothing physical, just an idea that they wrote down, and them to go to someone and say, I believe in that idea, I'm going to fund that idea. And then when we sit here and we see these examples of it, what I tend to see more so often than not is I tend to see people who have taken their bootstraps up, right? Like Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos. People will argue what they want to about conspiracy theories or not, but I remember seeing Jeff Bezos take an interview in a Honda Civic, go into a very, 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 I don't want to say middle class, lower class house, and he was already a millionaire. He was already worth $1 million. There's a 60 Minutes interview about him driving with the man, I can't remember what's his name, but he hosted 60 Minutes, and he's driving to his house. He's driving him in his Honda Civic. He's like, Honda Civics are very reliable cars. What am I wasting the money on? I'm trying to grow my business. People have their conspiracies about how he made his money, this, and the third. What I often see a lot more of is a victim mentality, that there's two sets of people. There's the people who are victims, who will over-dramatize their victimhood so that way they don't move. And then there's the victims who decide not to take on the identity of victim, and they become successful. And what ends up happening is that the people who are victims who end up being successful, victims of whatever circumstance they want to give themselves. But the people who could be considered victims, whether it be of poverty or bad cars being dealt or whatever, the people who make themselves not only survive, but actually succeed, they start to devalue the victim story of the people who don't want to change and want to blame everyone else for their failures but themselves. This is, I think, a very, very telling case that people, to me, what I encourage in my coaching, victim mentality is not allowed. It's not allowed. It's not that it's not real. What I ask my clients to do and what I ask them to see is that, hey, listen, before you want any change in the world, before you want any change in your life, you have to have a clean slate. You cannot look at the world from a victim lens. You cannot look at the world from a trauma lens. You can't do it. You have to do the work to heal before you want anything better for yourself. Whether it be forgiving the person that hurt you, whether it be forgiving the person who robbed you of a couple dollars on the street, or whether it be $2 million, whether it be the person who treated you bad, the family that neglected you, the partner that left you, cheated on you, whatever the case may be, if you want better for your life, you cannot be in the victim mode. It doesn't work. Victims and people who take on the identity of victim, they tend to think, or they do, think that everything is owed to them. They tend to think everything is owed to them. Greed, and this is something that the episode didn't touch on, but I'm going to touch on it here. Greed there's a reason why the Bible says that greed is a sin. The reason why greed is a sin is because we, as humans, think it's innate. We think that in every one of us, there's a small little semblance of greed somewhere. Let's just say that's true. Greedy people exist on both sides. To say that the rich people are all nothing but greedy people is a lie, just as much as to say that every poor person is a victim. It's the same argument. Not every person who is poor is there by circumstances they cannot control. That is not true. And not every person who's rich made their money by exploiting everybody. That's also not true. The problem is that both sides are so extreme when really the underlying thing of it is greed. Yes, there are people whose intent when they get rich is to hoard all the money and not give anything out. Of course, that's a greedy person, whether they have money or not. What people don't talk about on the other side, greedy, poor people are people who have all the capability of working, have all the capability to make something of themselves, get assets, get money, do whatever they have to do, and they over-dramatize their situation, they over-dramatize their illnesses, and then they say the government owes them things. And what they do is they take advantage of the social benefits that are meant for the people who are really victims, the people who amputees, people who literally have, Daniel said he knows a man who got all 4 limbs cut off when he went partying sometime, right? In the podcast. Again, I encourage you all to go watch it. He could have sat there, collected welfare, and been that person. Now, he's a millionaire, basically encouraging other people not to give up because he's doing, I could be wrong here, but I think he opened up multiple gyms, being a I'm forgetting the word, but it's basically a amputee, but all 4 limbs. I'm missing the word right now. That difference in the mentality mindset, in that shift of saying, hey, listen, this is not going to define me. This is not going to define, I'm not going to let it. Not that I won't try. I'm not going to let this define me. I'm not going to let something, I can only imagine all 4 limbs getting cut off, right? But he'd even give the sympathy to himself. He literally sat here and was like, I'm not going to let this define me. He could have been the person who collected welfare checks his whole life. What is he going to do with a torso and a head? What is he going to do? He decided to change. That was him. No person came to him. No person did this, that, and the third. Daniel said that he told him that he's going to make this the most successful thing that has ever happened to him. Lo and behold, he's a millionaire now. That story to me reads out a lot because, again, I would not be doing a service to this podcast. I would not be doing a service to my coaching or the people I really tell people to go out there and make the most of it. Pursue your passion. Pursue what makes you happy. Money will come secondary because I know I'm not the exception to the rule. I actually have very great pride in saying I'm not the exception to the rule. If I could do it, why could not everyone else? Why couldn't we? In the podcast, Gary was saying, oh, and by the way, and it's funny because when you look at it from a third person lens, you can kind of see a little bit of a hypocrisy there. But Gary earns $2 million becoming a day trader. He then released a thing book. Hold on one second, guys. I'm gonna come right back. Hold on one second.